the change in face of Ontario. And this comes from, of course, this information, of course, comes from the Ontario Equity and Inclusive Strategy 2009. It examines the change in face of Ontario. This is 2009. Language. Ontarians reported more than 200 languages as mother tongues. Aboriginal people. Between 2001 and 2006, Ontario's Aboriginal population grew nearly 5 times faster than the non-Aboriginal population. Families. Between 2001 and 2006, the number of lone parent families increased by 11.2%. You know, here is something simple. I like to use those simple examples just to underline a point. When you walk into your grade 2 and your grade 3 classes, what are the visuals on the wall about families? I know we're talking about the many types of families, but are we all talking about the many types of families? Are we talking about the many types of families in deficit ways? You know, the teacher, again, here we talk about the teacher again, the teacher, the seat of power, the teacher. You know, are we talking about the right family? Are we using those kind of words? The right family, the proper family. You know, is a child who sits in your room on the carpet when we're talking and she, you know, comes from a single mom, you know, is she feeling left out or feeling less than by the way you're teaching, or does she feel just as, our family just as beautiful because it got the same type of energy from you? Sometimes we don't even realize, like Charlene said, we don't even know. Charlene says you don't know what you don't know. And when you know, you do better. Absolutely, Charlene. Next one, same-sex couples. Between 2001 and 2006, the number of self-identified same-sex couples increased by 40%. Yet still, we have many issues about the sex ed curriculum and what we cannot or cannot say to the students. So a child who comes to school and he has 2 dads, of course he's going to feel less than in your class. Is he feeling less than in your class? How is his family being looked at in your lesson? How is he treated in your class? You know, you may just put the words on the board because you have to teach a lesson because you get a salary to teach that. But students are smart. They're smarter than we often make them to be. And they know if they are being valued. Newcomers. Ontario continued to be the province of choice for more than half, 52.3% of the 1.1 million newcomers who arrived in Canada during 2001 to 2006. More than half of these newcomers will settle in areas outside of Toronto. I want you to understand that implication, outside of Toronto. I have been to schools in the York region. I've been to schools in Durham region. I see what the staff looks like. You know, we're talking about the influx of Syrian refugees in our school. Are we ready to receive them and to treat them like students and not just like refugees, but treat them like students? What is their first day at school like? You know, what are the experiences we are offering to these students? Are we giving them less? Are we giving them more because they need more? Think about that. Visible minorities. The 2006 census enumerated an estimated 2.7 million Ontarians who identify themselves as members of the visible minority population, representing more than half of Canada's total visible minorities. They are here. They are here to stay. How do we think about these minorities and these immigrants? You know, and of course I'm going to go there. Absolutely, I'm going to go there with Trump and his shit old comment. But I hope you realize that's one comment that got out. You know, when people are making this big issue about that comment, I just smile to myself because that comment is one, I bet one of hundreds of comments he has made. Just that this one got out. Every time someone famous or someone important or someone significant or someone that we have made important or significant says something like this, says some rubbish out of their mouth like this, we all go and we gasp and we breathe and we are shocked. But this is what they do naturally. This is their natural kitchen table talk. This is how people feel. But forget the talk. Think about a person who has this kind of philosophy and this kind of belief system. You remember our first presentation, we talk about impacting policy. Think how they will impact policies. Let's move on to religion. By 2017, about one-fifth of our population will be members of diverse faith communities, including Islam, Hinduism, Buddhism, Judaism, in addition to a growing number of individuals without a religious affiliation. I'm going to tell you something. I'm from Jamaica. Of course, we have Rastafarian, right? We have Rastafarian. As a young teacher, our schools are supposed to be, say, we're government schools, right? And we consider ourselves to be a Christian nation. I'm not sure how that came about or what that means really. So we are devotion. And every single child in the school must participate in devotion. It took me years being away from that, years of knowing and understanding what kind of ridiculousness or what kind of exclusion, inequality, exclusionary practice that is to have a child who doesn't identify as Christian and who clearly has a different faith as Rastafarian to stand up in devotion and sing Christmas songs, Christian songs, and clap and pray and read the Bible. How disrespectful. How disrespectful of us as educators. And I'm going to tell you something, it's still happening. I think there's a change coming, but it's still happening. There's a change happening because more and more principals are becoming aware. They are becoming aware, they're becoming smarter. So they are becoming aware. Right? So there is indeed a need for culturally responsive and relevant pedagogy and culturally responsive and relevant leadership in our schools. Right? Think about that. Look at that statistics. Who sits in the classroom has changed dramatically over the last 20 years. But many of us, we are still teaching like we taught the last 20 years. Right? So here are a few questions from the Center of Urban Schooling. So here are a few questions from the Center for Urban Schooling. Framework for Culturally Responsive and Relevant Pedagogy, 2009, for consideration for further discussion. How do schools reflect institutionalized discrimination? Racism, homophobia, sexism, classism. How do they respond practically to it? Notice the comma, notice the word. How do they respond practically to it? Does a school promote a culture in which both students and teachers can work together to talk about how to address these issues and monitor their progress in making school-wide changes towards equity? What role does stronger school leadership play in this development? Just talked about it. Thinking of ourselves in relation to leadership, we have to consider these questions, right? How do we ensure that the policies, here we go, that's the word, how do we ensure that the policies and practices of schooling, timetable, agreement, staff models, I love this one, staff models, programming, supervision, are flexible and innovative to meet the needs of all students, but especially those who are not well served by conventional schooling practices. In what ways is a school a safe place where students can connect to their own identities and build a foundation of confidence, self-esteem, and self-awareness